Good evening, everyone. This is Aesthetic Impact Informational Services presentation this evening, Scoring Your Remote Viewing Summary with Confidence. I'm Teresa Frisch, and our presenter this evening and trainer and expert, Lynn Buchanan. And we thank you, Lynn, for being here and for sharing your knowledge of all you've learned of remote viewing and your score sheet that we'll be working from. Apologize for my Welsh Corgi who just bailed out the door there. Thinks she needs to guard me from squirrels. And apologizing here for this font at the top. I got a little happy with some of the artistic pieces of my processor and then couldn't make it go away. So it looked a little fuzzy, and thank heaven I only used it on just the top. So, Dave Beatty is here with us, and David and I have been kicking around for months that we would like to review both scoring and summaries with the group and record it for whoever can't be here because of time zones and busy schedules, because as we learn in Lynn's camp, and I'm not partial to that by any means, but I do think that when we train, Lynn trains us toward becoming operational or application. Operational is still sort of seems to be a military term in a lot of people's mind, but to apply what we're doing and move from training and practice modes, scoring your session, I really think gives you some tangible feedback. It helps you see not only how well you're doing, your strengths and your weaknesses, but it gives you that reinforcement. And Lynn has made a lot of good points in a recent post, very recent, hours old, to one of our advanced viewers. And so I bulleted those out, and I hope he'll go over those, and then spend some time on page 2 explaining how it is PSI chose these particular perceptions for scoring. And that's what I'd like us to spend a little bit of time on, because people score themselves hard. And you will tell us that time and time again. You know, join the crowd. You know, you're a typical viewer. You just beat yourself up here. But why would something be a texture to one person and what else would it be a choice of? A pattern or something to someone else. But I'd like to spend some time on that, because I think it would help maybe get people's perception of how to look at their session a little differently and broaden their scope. Did that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And with that, I think I will turn it over to you, and David, chime in with, let's take your mic off since you and I were batting this around in email for forever and a day. And Lynn, why don't you just go ahead and start, and we'll see where we end up. That's okay?
Okay.
Okay.
You know, the mantra of remote viewing is describe, don't identify. And even when people get experienced and all where they can go through an entire session and only describe, not identify the target, they come up to the summary and all of a sudden they try to start telling you what the target is. And they editorialize and all that. And the fact is that, like police, they don't want to know the psychological makeup or whatever of, I mean, they have profilers for that and all. They want a description of a place, of a perp, or whatever, you know, just the facts, man. So anyway, what you want to get onto your score sheet is descriptors. And so that's what you want in your summary. The police don't want you to solve the case for them. The business person doesn't want you knowing or analyzing what the project they're asking you to describe is, or the invention or whatever. They want descriptors, and that's it. And this is one of the big differences between psychics and remote viewers. Psychics is supposed to give you the full answer and you know, describe, tell you everything what's going on, tell you everything that there is to know. A remote viewer describes and gives you descriptors so that then you can figure out what it is. Well, the score sheet that we have, of course, does not go to the customer in an application. What that is for is so that you can check as you practice and see what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Also, because this goes into a database, a project manager can say, oh, we need somebody who's really good at colors because they know it's a car, you know, the police know it's a car, they know generally the make and model, but they don't know the color. So the project manager looks in there to see who's the best at colors, asks that person to do the session. And by doing that, you know, you could use a whole team full of people who average 70% accuracy, but if you use them for their strength, then overall as a team you can get 90 to 95% accuracy. And so anyway, there are a lot of uses for this database, not only that it tells you what your strengths and weaknesses are so that you can know what to practice on, what kind of targets, practice targets to ask for and all that, and what kind of projects to volunteer for, by the way. Okay, so the data has got to come from somewhere. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is they will score their entire session. They don't write a summary, and so all they have to score is their session. And the fact is that when you first start out in a remote viewing session, you get garbage. And you can be in this field for 40 years and your session is going to start with garbage. It always does. And you slowly get yourself to the target, and by the end of the session, then you're on target, you have a good rapport with the target and all that. That's when you can go back through your session and simply pull out the information that should go into a summary, and then when you score your summary, you're only scoring the information about the target. You're not scoring all that garbage along with it. You'll hear researchers, Ed May, Russell Targ, a lot of the researchers in this field will say that a good score for a remote viewing session is 15% accuracy. Well, that's because they're scoring the garbage along with the good. You know, well, of course you're going to have a low score. But the viewer, by pulling out that information and then scoring only the summary, which is actually the summary of the good information about the target. That's when you get an honest and accurate assessment of your strengths, your weaknesses, and that's when the customer gets an honest assessment of what the target is, okay, description of the target. And so anyway, to score a session, you really need to write a summary. And as Teresa was saying, we're going to go in depth into summary writing, but let me give you a quick down and dirty, and it's the one she has on her screen here. You started down in phase 1 with the gestalts. Okay, list the gestalts you got. I don't know what the target is, but it has land, water, and something man-made. Okay. So then you get to the end of your session, and you may have found people at the site, okay? Land, water, man-made, and biological. So now then you have 4 different aspects of the target. One at a time you write down, the target has land. The land is Then you start at phase 2 in your summary, and you quickly, very quickly, scan through to the end. Now I say quickly because you don't want to sit there and belabor this and judge every single aspect. What you want to do is let your subconscious point out to you what's important to the land. And so you don't want to go through every descriptor of the water and everything else that's on the page. You know how you'll see a document or something like that, and one sentence will pop out to you? Okay, that's your subconscious saying, hey, here's the important thing. And you can trust your subconscious to do the same thing when you write a summary. And so you, as though you were a speed reader, you say, the land is, you go to the first page of stage 2 material where you're describing, and you quickly just scan through it, and guess what? Things will pop out at you, and you say, oh, yeah, that's right, and you write it into your summary. If you have like 4 gestalts, then you shouldn't, let's say you have 20 pages of summary, you shouldn't spend over probably 2 minutes writing your summary, simply because you're not checking everything. You're letting your subconscious tell you what to write down. It knows better than you do. Okay, so now then you have a sheet of paper that says, I have a target which has land, water, natural, and biological. You have a next paragraph that says, the land is, and you describe the land. The next paragraph says, the water is, you describe the water. The next one says, the man-made is, and you describe that. Then the biological, and you describe that from what you got in the session. Now, you can still remote view while you're doing your summary, but don't editorialize. Don't try to start telling them what the target is. You describe, you don't identify. Then you do one last paragraph that says, other things I got were, and that's where nothing else fits. You say, oh, well, it was daytime and it was outdoors and, you know, the weather was balmy or something like that. Just things that didn't fit into the other categories. And then you end the session and you quit. Now, have you missed some stuff? Yeah. But the stuff you didn't miss is what your subconscious mind is telling you, this is gold. Write it down. And so you spent maybe 2-3 minutes at the most summarizing a 20-page session, and you got your summary. Okay. From that summary, you can then get your scoring of the session. Would you put up that thing from the manual? No, the other one. That's it. Okay. For instance, you've gone through your session and you find that there's a 2-story white house partway up a hill, partway down a hill. It's steep and grassy. It has green shutters. What does? The house or the hill? Okay. There are chicken sounds. Okay. Then you simply write out, there is a house. Okay. You do your gestalts first, but then you say there's a house. It is white. It has 2 stories. It has shutters. And then under shutters you say they're green. There's a hill which is steep and grassy. The house is on the hill partway up. There are chicken sounds. Okay. Notice the 2 little lines out here to the right. House is an object. White is a color. 2 stories is a number or a measure. It has shutters. Those are objects. Green, that's color. Okay? You can fill those in with the categories of information that are on the score sheet, and we'll get into why those were selected in just a minute. Then, the second little thing over here to the right, there is a house. You look at the feedback. Oh, there's a house. So you put yes. It's white, and the house is white. So you put yes. It's 2 stories, but you look and it's a 1-story house. So you put no. It has shutters, and it has shutters. So you put a yes, but the shutters in the feedback picture are not green. Let's say they're red. And so right beside the word color, you would put no, I got a color wrong. Okay? There's a hill, that's an object. Steep is a shape. Grassy is a texture. House is on the hill, that's a relationship. Part way up, that's a measure. There are chicken sounds, that's a sound. And you go through looking at the feedback, marking each one of these as yes, no, or let's say that the feedback picture does not show any chickens, but it shows that it is out in the country. So you don't know if there's chickens or not, okay? So down here around sound, you put a question mark because you can't answer. Now, one of the big mistakes that people say is, oh, if it's not in the feedback, then I got it wrong. No, you do that, you're just being unnecessarily hard on yourself. If it's not in the feedback, you can't feedback. So you mark it with a question mark. Now, you have yes, yes, no, yes, yes, no, and object, color, measure, and so on that. Okay. You go over to your score sheet, and you simply take these. You say object, and you make a tick mark in the yes, color, yes, measure, no, and so on. And you simply transfer this data over into your score sheet. And let's say you have 3 pages of data. You should be able to do that in about 3 minutes. And once you get practiced at this, you won't even take that long. And so everybody tries this one time. They find, oh, I just took 30 minutes to do a summary and a score sheet. Well, hey, the second time you're going to take 15 minutes. The third time you're going to take 5 minutes, and from then on you're going to take 3 or 4 minutes to do a summary and, and so on. And so you fill out the data sheet by simply moving this stuff over. And do you have the next page there?
Sorry, I muted myself. I have page 2 up. You want me to go to page 3?
Yeah.
All right.
And so here you have your score sheet. As your name, all the administrative information. The actual site is a white 1-story house with blue shutters on a grassy rise. Okay, and you notice I've got 1 color right, 1 color perception wrong. I've got 3 objects that I named correctly. I've got 1 relationship that's off to the side. Anyway, that was correct, 1 that was incorrect. I've got 1 correct shape and 1 incorrect shape. I've got a sound that I can't feedback on. And so if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see the total number of perceptions I got was 11. 1 I can't feedback on, so I can't score it. So how many do I have that I can score? 10. How many did I get correct? 6, giving me 60% accuracy. It's a very, very simple process, and all it requires is a person to do it 4 or 5 times, and all of a sudden it is just so fast and so easy that that you wonder why you ever did it any other way. Now, so, Teresa said don't dwell too long on how to write a summary, but the summary is the thing. What if you went through your entire session without writing a summary and you scored all the garbage and all the good? You would have all kinds of stuff in here, all kinds of marks in here and everything, but because you would have a lot of garbage, you would have tons of no's in here or can't feedback. And so you wouldn't get an accurate score. So even if you're going to do it, write your summary by some other method than the quick way, score from your summary, and don't score that entire session, okay? Because the entire session is good and garbage. You don't want the garbage, you know, the old thing of databases, garbage in equals garbage out. So if you put garbage into here and you look at your score and your average, it's going to give you garbage. It won't be accurate. And that, in a nutshell, is basically the way to database. You get all the information ahead of time, then you just transfer it over, you know, line by line. Now, in this score sheet, let me show you something here. Okay, your name or your viewer number, the date, the date, location, kitchen table. All right. A lot of people want to put their town name or something like that in there. Don't do that because you get a score here of 60% working at the kitchen table. You do another session, your desk at work, and you get 80%. And you go through this session after session after session. It will also tell you where you do your best work. Not only what you're good at, what you're bad at, what you need more practice at, but where you get your best work. You put the start time and the end time, and then actual site is white one-story house. Okay. Let's say you've done 100 targets, and you do something in this session, and you say, you know, strange thing happened in this session, and that same thing also happened back when I was doing the Taj Mahal. Okay? I don't remember the date I did the Taj Mahal. I don't remember what the score was. I don't remember what the coordinates were or where I did the session. But if I keep all of these sessions with this data sheet as a cover sheet, I can very quickly flip through my sessions looking for, on this line here, actual site is Taj Mahal. I pull that session out, and the session I have today, I look through it, and I find out something about how my mind works, okay? And what my mind is trying to tell me when it does this strange, odd thing. And so this data sheet has tons of different uses. Now, if you look down at the very bottom on this, you can scroll down with that scroll bar on the side. Viewer's notes and summary, viewer summary and notes. Okay, during the session, I was trying to get the color, and my eyes kept being drawn to a blue drinking glass, you know, here in the room with me. Okay, it bothered me, but the feedback showed that same exact blue on the shutters. I guess my mind was trying to tell me something like, see, like this, and that does happen during a session. You can have trucks rolling by, you can have trains going by, and you won't even hear them during your session, and then a bird goes by and goes tweet, 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 and it pulls you away from the session and you hear it. That's not a distractor, that's your mind saying, hey, pay attention to this because it's important. So when you write your summary, just like when you do your session, let your subconscious mind be in charge. Then, whatever you learn in your session about how you think and how your mind tells you things, write it in these notes down here, and this will be a permanent thing of what you learned about your own self. So, I think somebody on the remote viewer list asked today, is all you do is just keep these sessions? You know, this is just so that you can log your sessions? No, it's not just a bit bucket, and it's not just a, you know, a big bucket that you throw things into and never see again. this thing here will tell you your strengths and weaknesses. It'll tell you where you do your best work, what time of day you do your best work. It will tell you what you found out about the way you think. It will tell you what kind of target you need to ask people for, because you need training in colors. You know, you need practice in colors or shapes or something like that. And this data sheet is designed to tell you a ton of information about yourself. And so don't be afraid to use the database, okay? It's really worth it. And in the beginning, yeah, it's a little more work. But once you learn it, writing your summary and doing the data is fast. And, you know, if you're taking an hour or two or even 30 minutes or 45 minutes to do your session summary and your data sheet, you're just doing it wrong, okay? Because, you know, this was designed in such a way that you've got a general sitting out in the hallway tapping his foot and watching, you know, looking at his watch every 3 seconds and getting more and more impatient. Okay, this is a way that you can write your summary, move it over to data, have it out in the hallway, say, General, here's your answer, just like that. And so don't be afraid to use the database. Plus, it helps the project manager select the viewers to do a project. It helps the researchers because they can come in and they can say, okay, overall, of all the remote viewers, what's the easiest thing for the mind to pick up, what's the hardest thing for the mind to pick up, and so on, okay? So this database helps everybody. And like I say, people do it once, it's cumbersome the first time, and so they don't go back and do it again. And that's sad. I really don't know what else to say about this.
Can you talk a little bit about the categories?
Oh, yeah. We had 85 categories to begin with, and it was so cumbersome that nobody would ever do it.
And why would you even have more than 5 or 6?
Oh, because...
You have how many senses? Why go beyond those?
Oh, because these are the types of information that customers are interested in getting. See, we did this to find out how well you can serve in applications. We are application-oriented. We're not just trying to tell you your strengths and weaknesses. We're trying to train you by showing you your weaknesses and then training, you know, giving you more practice in those. We're trying to get you to where you can work for police or archaeologists or researchers, scientists, shoot, any customer at all, okay? Stock market and everything else. You'll notice that over here in the bottom, it says Other, over on the right side, okay? If you'll notice up here, there's no place for gestalts, because customers don't care about gestalts. They could care less about them. And so when you score your gestalts, you just throw it into Other. When you score other things that are not important to customers, it goes into the Other field, okay? And so from the first day of basic, we're not training you just to remote view. We're training you to remote view in the real world, in real applications, real projects for real customers. And the database, the categories are simply designed because these are the things customers care about when they ask you for information. Okay. Like I say, we had 85. Because that was so cumbersome always, we had to just sort of narrow the categories down. And so you were asking like textures. Okay. Let's say a viewer sees something that's ribbed. Okay. The viewer will know if they saw a pattern or if they felt a texture. Somebody else coming along and scoring that will say, oh, ribbed, that's a shape, you know, or a pattern or something like that, because they don't know what the viewer found. If the viewer does this, they'll say, yeah, it was ribbed, and I felt that it was ribbed. Oh, it's not a pattern anymore, it's a texture. Or they say, no, I just saw that it had a ribbed, you know, pattern to it. Now it's a pattern. And so the viewer is actually the only one who was at the target and therefore will know automatically what category to put these in. So somebody says, okay, what if I put it in the wrong category? If you're the viewer, you probably won't. But let's say you do. What's going to happen over hundreds of sessions that you do before you go professional is that it's going to even out in the database. Okay? And it will still tell us your strengths and weaknesses.
Can you talk a little about purposes? Give us some examples of purposes.
Yeah, okay. You, when you get into wind up in stage 3, okay, and you're no longer getting sensories and dimensionals, you know, text, color, feel, taste, and the shapes, and you say, oh, this feels scientific, or this feels religious. Well, that's the purpose of it. When you get into stage 4 and stage 6, you have the conceptuals column, and you say, what is the basic concept behind what I'm getting? Oh, it's business-like, or it's political, or it's recreational, or it's sport, or it's competition, things like that. Those are the purposes behind the site, or behind what you're viewing at the time. You know, it could be a part of the site that you're viewing, and so on. And so...
and relationships.
Relationships, okay, one's on top of the other. One is beside the other, okay? One is underneath the other. Now, a lot of people say, okay, then why alignment? Alignment says there are 5 of them, okay, that's a number, in a row. Ah, that's how they're aligned. Or they're aligned in a circle, or they're aligned in a square, or something like that. And so, you know, this shows the relationship of 2 things, or alignment shows the arrangement of many things.
And composition versus density.
Okay, these have been shown to be of importance to customers, which is why they're there. Okay, density versus what?
Composition.
Oh, okay, density is basically how thick is it, okay? Is it syrupy? Is it watery? Is it hard as rock? Something like that. Composition. Is it made out of metal? Is it made out of wood? Is it made out of whatever? And so composition tells what it's made out of. Density tells how dense it is.
Okay. Let's see, I'm trying to think. Meanings versus conceptuals.
Versus what?
Conceptuals, the difference between a meaning of something.
Okay, there are times, especially when you get really dealing with your subconscious mind, that you're going to get a lot of symbolic information. Okay, And this one is strictly for that symbolic information. Like the old example I give, you get pink, furry, cuddly army tank or something like that, okay? And you say, army tank, what does that mean? Oh, it means dangerous. Then you look at the feedback and you see something pink, furry, cuddly, and dangerous, then you got the meaning right.
Okay.
Measures, of course, measures. Okay, that's supposed to be measures. Measures, that's numbers. Numbers, and you say something is big, that's a size. You say it's 23 feet long, that's a measure. And so you see, when we cut these down from 85 categories down to, what is this, 25 now? It made for a lot of confusion. And yet the viewer will learn to put in their mark right at the place where they experienced it. Did they feel the pattern or did they see the pattern? Is it, is it metallic? Fine, it's metallic. And its density, it's made of metal. Its density is like thick syrup. Okay, you either have melted metal or, and then you say temperature over here is cold. Well, you've got mercury. Now, you don't have to say mercury, and yet your customer is going to say, oh, I've got a liquid metal that's at room temperature. I've got mercury. The customer knows what it is. You only have to describe it.
And how about ambiance?
Ambiance is a word that we rarely use because English is just not oriented toward ambiance. Ambiance is the feel of something that can't be assigned to a body part. Okay. You walk into a church and there's that hushed feeling. Okay. That's the ambiance of the place. You're sitting in a room and all of a sudden, even though your back's to the door, somebody walks in and they're angry as they can be, and the whole feel of the room changes. Okay, you didn't use your ears, your eyes, your skin, and you didn't use your five senses, and yet you sense that change in ambiance. And it's the feel of the room around you, okay? And you go outside, and it's a beautiful day, okay? The sky is blue and all this other stuff. You can describe the sky, you can describe the trees and the sunshine and the color of the sunshine and the sounds of the birds and everything else. But the ambiance, how does that day feel to you? That's the ambiance. It feels like a glorious day. That's an ambiance feel. So it's a feeling to which no one body part can be attributed to it. Okay.
I think I detect a John Wayne application here finally.
Yeah.
Mighty fine day, partner.
Yeah. Yeah. For those who don't know the term John Wayning, it's actually a psychological term, not exclusive to remote viewing. You say to John Wayne, "How are you today?" And John Wayne will say, "Well, partner, it's a mighty fine day." That doesn't answer the question. The question was, how are you? And what people will do with the aesthetic impact is they'll get a feeling, an ambiance from that aesthetic impact, and then they'll say, "Oh, it's scary." No, What did you feel? Oh, I was scared. Ah, there's your ambiance. Okay.
There's a question Janine has typed in. She doesn't think she quite understands meanings yet. Could we review that again?
Yeah, okay. Meanings, you will get symbolic information within a session. And let's say you're working along let's say you're working along on a business question, okay? And you're describing a person within the company who should get promoted or who shouldn't. They give you 5 people, and you're going to give descriptors, and from those descriptors they will decide who's to be promoted. Okay, and you come to this one person, and you get an ET with the big eyes and the gray skin and all this other stuff. Okay, as like a picture. Okay, this guy is probably not an ET. And so what your mind is trying to tell you is, this guy is not from this company. You know, he may be an industrial spy, and he's an alien to this company. And so you break down the meaning of your visual, and you say, what does a little gray mean to me? Oh, foreigner, alien to this place. And then when the feedback comes back, they find out, oh, guess what? This guy was a mole for another company, for our competitors. Okay, then you got a meaning correct. And just like Army tank, you're describing something as being nice, cuddly, and all that, and then all of a sudden, pop, your mind just gives you a picture of an Army tank, or a machine gun, or something like that. Okay, or a big ogre being, or something like that, and you say, I wonder what that means, because you know it's not about the target, and so you say, I wonder what that means. You break out the meaning behind it, and we give you the tools to do that in the higher stages. And you break out the meaning behind symbolic information, and here's where you can tell whether or not you're correctly understanding your own mind's symbols that it uses to give you information. One of our viewers, anytime there's a biological that is an animal instead of a human, we'll get a very neat, clear picture of 4 giraffe legs. Now, why? Why her subconscious mind picked that one thing? But it will show her 4 giraffe legs, no matter what kind of animal it is. Okay, and 4 giraffe legs to her means this biological is not human. And she has learned over a period of time that that's the meaning of that perception anytime she gets it. And so, for a basic student, they would rarely ever use this area here for meanings. But when you get more involved into more involved targets, and you get to the higher levels, you're going to start getting symbolic information, and this judges how well you can break out symbolic information from your own subconscious mind. Did that help, Janine?
Much clearer,
oh, good.
Jesus. Thank you.
Okay, good deal. Anybody have any questions at all about any of this?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you want to open it up for questions, if you wanted to flip back through, and just anybody, I don't think, Lynn, you can get this form, I think, in the 7th sense, and you know, Xerox your own copy of it. But
yeah.
Anybody who wants it, I could, you could email me, and I could send it to you in a file.
We have it on on the disk that we give to all the students, and sure enough, Microsoft took care of that by making it to where the old programs don't work anymore. And so, but I've been hoping to go ahead and put this up on the web page so that people can just download it, print off all the copies they want.
Oh, I have this file I'd be happy to send to you if that would help. Can you put that up?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Well, I have the file. It's just getting it up onto the web page. We're in the process of moving over to our own server, and so everything has to be rewritten.
Okay. Well,
because we're dumping Microsoft.
Okay.
We're dumping Microsoft and then having a party.
Well, anyway, if anybody wants this form, email me, and I will be happy to send it back.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to ask questions about what we've talked about here, please feel free to take your mute off or put your hand in the air or type something in. And then if you want to, I thought I didn't set it up this way, but if we want to try jockeying and scoring an actual session, I would have to get the feedback and use my desktop, but we could probably do it. It's up to you guys. But
I've got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
This is Gail. I have a question about what's fair to score as a yes. And let me give an example to explain the question. Suppose your tasking is to describe an event. So you describe the event, and you also describe a unique feature of the landscape near the event, or a structure or something. Normally you take a yes for everything that you described about the event or the thing nearby, I assume, as a yes, because that's just additional information, might be useful to the analyst, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But now suppose the same thing, your tasking was to describe an event, and you completely missed the event, and the only thing you describe is this structure that's nearby. In that case, it starts to feel more like the structure was an attractor that drew you off of your main target, which was the event. Now you've given this great description of a structure when your tasking was to describe an event.
Yeah.
In both cases, you've given the exact same description of the structure. Would you give yourself yes points for all those descriptors, or only in the case where it was additional information as opposed to an attractor?
No, if it's there and you got it, then absolutely it's a yes. Now the thing is, let's say the police want to know what went on during an event, and so they task you with an event, and you describe a nearby building. Okay?
Right.
Did you miss the target, or is your subconscious mind telling the police, go over to that building because there's evidence there, or there's a witness there, or whatever? The answer you want is right there. And the answer to that question is that you don't know. And so what you have to wind up doing, and this is the hardest part for most remote viewers, is you have to turn it over to your subconscious mind and trust what it gives you. And so, I mean, there have been just hundreds of times recorded when somebody would task us, like with an event, and we would come back with a location. And sure enough, later, much later, the customer would find out that was really the bit of information that I needed.
Okay.
And so, yeah, if it's there and you got it, you score it yes.
Okay. I'm thinking, I guess, of an example that I must have heard during one of the classes, where somebody puts a secret research facility next to an amusement park. So if you try to view the research facility, you end up describing the amusement park instead.
Right. That's a distractor, yeah.
So would you still give yourself yes points for all the descriptions of the amusement park if your tasking was to describe the research facility?
Yes, in the scoring sheet you would, yes,
then how do you signal your subconscious that next time you're in a situation like this, I don't really want you to tell me about the amusement park, I want you to tell me about the thing that was the real target?
What will happen is that you will find that you failed your customer. You can have 100% accuracy and yet not answer your customer's question. And so, you know, at some point, the customer comes back to you and says, hey, that information was spot on, it was 100% correct, but it didn't do us any good. And that in itself is a little slap in your subconscious mind's face that says, okay, next time we do better. And the fact is that that same customer may come back a year later and say, hey, you did give us the information because there were 5 secret meetings that we knew about in 5 secret facilities, and by describing the amusement park, you told us which one was the most important. And so you never know. The whole thing is you've got to trust your subconscious mind, and if it fails, then you take your hits. If it succeeds, you know, your customer can go out and drink 8 martinis.
I used, for an example, analogy once. Somebody was trying to sort of figure out, I can't remember, but anyway, I said, you know, so suppose your dog is lost and being kept somewhere, and you wanted the shelters or whatever, and the one shelter had a picture of a big washing machine on a laundromat across the street. That may not seem to be important, but if you're standing at the front door of the structure where your dog is, and that's what you see, and there's only one shelter in the area that has that view, you know, that might help. I just pretty much made that up, but that was it, and it made the analogy clear to the student at the time. That's been a long time ago.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
You don't know what's important, but the subconscious does.
The subconscious does, and at some point you have to trust it. And the tasker many times will task you with the wrong tasking. Because they don't want you to know what the secret is or something like that, and so they will task you with what's called roundabout tasking. They will say, what will happen next Friday at noon? And so you're off viewing an event next Friday at noon, but what they really want to know is, what decision should I make today? Okay? And so, in order to keep you from knowing what their tasking is, they protect their little secrets by giving you roundabout tasking. And your subconscious many times will say, you know, hey, screw that tasking, I know what the question really is, and give you an answer that doesn't seem to appear to, you know, doesn't seem to coordinate with the question at all.
Why not, you know, just why not make it a little tougher, for crying out loud?
Oh, yeah, sure. You'd be surprised how many customers, especially during the first or second, you know, first few times that they use a remote viewer, will try to protect their information by giving you roundabout tasking. You also have another problem when you're working applications, real-world targets, and that is, let's say some company has a secret project going on, or they're developing some secret new invention or something, and it comes time for feedback, they're going to lie to you. And so the feedback you get will be garbage going into the database. And, you know, I guarantee when you work for the CIA, and you get the target correct, they're going to come back and lie to you. Or they're going to come back and say, I'm sorry, you're not cleared for this information. And the way to know that you got it 100% accurate is when this big black van and 3 big black, cars come wheeling up to your house and they take all your computer and everything else away. That's when you sit back and grin and say, man, I scored that one. And that has happened, by the way. But, yeah, the thing is, at some point, every remote viewer comes face to face with their subconscious mind, and their subconscious mind is saying, trust me. And their conscious mind says, oh, I don't know if I can do that because I don't want to be wrong, and, and all that. And it's still that who's going to be dominant here, who's going to be in charge of the session. And it's at some point in your career as a remote viewer that you finally learn to say, okay, I'm going to trust you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
In case you needed a visual for describing something. So.
Yeah.
I've noticed a double presentation recently in sessions, and I think it's first the imagination and then the subconscious makes a presentation. It's a little dimmer, a little more distant. It's like a 1-2 image. And I've got to balance between choosing the imagination one over, I have to distinguish between the two of them. And it's a recent phenomenon.
This solves itself with tons and tons of experience. When I give a demo to a class, I'll yank a thing out and right at the session where you set everything aside, one of the things I have to set aside, and I do it mentally rather than writing it down, is who's in charge. It's sort of a question of who's on first. And I just sort of make an agreement with myself. No matter what perception you give me, I'm going to write it down. And then at the end of the session, I'm going to scan through these pages, and no matter what pops out, I'm going to write it down. And no matter whether it makes sense to me or not, or whether it even appears to make sense to anybody, it's my summary. I'm going to turn it in. And there comes a time when you just learn to trust your own subconscious mind. It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of faith, and I don't know if you've heard the definition of faith or not, the analogy for it. You're working on a high-rise building it, and all you have is just the strut work, and you've got to carry a load of bricks across this narrow strut, or this board that's laid out between two things. And you don't know if that's going to hold you up. Okay? That's doubt. And so you see somebody else cross with a load of bricks, and you say, okay, now I think it'll hold me up. You see somebody twice your weight with a bigger load of bricks than you have cross that board, and you say, okay, now I firmly believe it's going to hold me up. Faith is when you step out on that board, okay, with your load of bricks. And it's the same with who's in charge of this session. Knowing that your subconscious mind is going to take care of it is knowledge and belief. It's when you turn everything over to your subconscious mind, that's faith, okay? And you've got to reach that if you're ever going to be a world-class remote viewer.
Questions, anybody? I was just scrolling down through some of these sessions that I had grabbed that I knew that I had summaries, And I'll be darned, 2 of them are phase 2 target exercises, so there are no coordinates for me to grab for feedback photos. So it's like, okay, well, so much for practicing yes, no's, and maybes against some feedback.
Alexis asked a very important question here. How are sketches incorporated into the scoring, or are they not included? We have a place for sketches, and basically what we have for sketches is yes, no, or can't feedback. Okay? I don't think it's on this page, it's on our website. The problem with sketches is that there are basically 2 kinds of sketches, and those kinds both mix together in a sketch. One kind is accurate sketching, and the other kind is symbolic sketching. And also the beginner artist problem. Okay, if you ask a kid to draw the United States and to draw their state in there, they're going to expand their state because it's more important to them, and all the others just have to kind of shrink and, you know, fit around it. A beginning artist will have the most problem with the head, hands, and feet, and so they always make those too big. And we exaggerate things that are important or difficult, and things that are easy or unimportant, we shrink them. And this is called the rubber band effect. And with sketching, you almost always get the rubber band effect. And so it's very hard to give an accurate score of a sketch. And we have tried and tried to find some way to give accurate scores of sketches. And finally, we just gave up and said, sketch. Was it helpful? Yes, no, or can't feedback. Okay. So we do score them, but at the same time we realize that the score we give it is not accurate and is not detailed and all that. We just basically say, yeah, there was a sketch and I think it was right, or I think it was helpful. If anybody can figure out a way to accurately score sketches, I want to know. Please let me know.
You know, I'm not going to rock the boat, but what about a sketch that was labeled that, you know, those perceptions got pulled down into the summary? Yes, they would be scored in the summary, so,
yep.
You know, once is enough, but, I don't know. It would be an example of how you knew that your sketch was really accurate.
The information from your sketch can be accurate. Okay? You can draw a flying saucer and describe it and have all those little points on it describing everything, and you think you're viewing a flying saucer when actually it's a fedora hat. And you have accurately described the fedora hat, even though you're convinced it's a flying saucer. Okay?
The Mexican hat, you know, you're talking about that, with all the little sparkles.
And so your sketch may be wrong, but the information you get from the sketch may be dead on accurate. And this is the problem with sketching.
Did that explain it, Alexis?
The thing you have to understand about sketches is that sketches are actually ideograms of their own. In controlled remote viewing, I'm not sure what you've learned, Alexis, but in controlled remote viewing, I'm sorry?
He's with Paul.
Oh, good. Okay. Good teacher then. You have one-dimensional ideograms in stage 1. You have two-dimensional ideograms in stage 3. And when you get to stage 6, you can have 3-dimensional ideograms, 4-dimensional, 5, and so on. with some of the advanced tools that we have. For instance, modeling. If you've had that, you get some clay and you actually model the target. You've got a three-dimensional representation of the target, but the important parts are made bigger, the unimportant parts are made smaller, and so it may not look like the target, but you touch it in any place and you get information off of it just like you would any other ideogram. And so what you've got to understand about sketches, diagrams and things like that is that they are ideograms, and so you interact with them and you get more information. And sometimes the ideogram, even the three-dimensional one, makes no more sense than your basic scribble that you do in phase 1, and yet the information is there. So the information can be accurate even though the sketch or the model may look wrong.
Except those little sketches that pop through when you run out of words. Are those ideograms?
Those are generally explanations, and they generally happen in stage 2. You're looking for a word to describe the sag in the top of a circus tent. Well, there is a word for it. It's hyperbolic paraboloid. Now, who's going to come up with that in the session? And so you're wanting to describe it, and you're saying sagging, but that's not the word you're wanting to describe because it's a sag that's supposed to be there, and so you don't know how to do it, so you say, and you just sketch it. Okay, that sketch is an explanation of what's in your mind. Now you go over and touch it. If it's a pure explanation, you won't get information off of it. If it is also an ideogram, you will.
More questions? You only score your summary, or to put it another way, anything you do not put into your summary is not scored. Did I understand correctly?
That's perfect. That doesn't mean that what is not in your summary is wrong. It means it's not scored. Now, when you do the summary, the fast summary, just letting your own subconscious pick out what goes into the summary, a lot of the detail about the target may be lost. But I can guarantee you what's in the summary is gold. I mean, that's the core information about the target. And so even though you may lose some detail, you're going to get what's really important. And so yeah, if it's not in the summary, then that means it's not scored, but that doesn't mean it's not right. Okay?
And back up to Lynn's post to Daz that I snatched this afternoon. It says here, I'm scrolling. Okay, when you go down through your session, you have both conscious mind trying to do its job and jump in there and name everything because it loves it. So you have to decide when you go down through your session and decide what goes in your summary, what the conscious mind has put in there, and it's your junk and your garbage, your AOLs, your castle building, your trash, and you don't want that. And so your summary is your subconscious mind. So you've got those two things in your session, and so that's why you don't score your session, you score your summary, because you've weeded out the garbage.
Right,
and
but
like
also
Lynn said, you might have lost some of the detail, but
yeah. Also, when you go down through your session, if you skim down through it very fast, that keeps your conscious mind out of the process. And that's why we say skim down through it very fast. Just see what pops out at you, because your subconscious will say, ooh, there it is. Pay attention to that. If you go through and you pick up every single descriptor and you say, is that right or wrong, or, you know, then you're belaboring it. You're putting your conscious mind in charge of writing the summary, and a lot of garbage is going to go into your summary.
because you're still viewing when you're writing your summary.
Well, yeah, no, actually you're not. If you're doing it that way, now if you're doing it with your subconscious mind, yeah, your subconscious mind is going to add stuff in that may not even be in your session. But if you go down through belaboring every single descriptor, boy, are you ever going to start doing AOLs and stray cats and start imagining and building castles and everything else. And so when you go through, you skim down, see what pops out. If nothing pops out, fine. Keep moving.
Okay. Speaking of keep moving, more questions? And while you're thinking of more questions, I'll put in a plug for the target of the week next week. Anybody who we still have another week. If you want front loading, I can send that to you. And if you get your session finished in time and would like to be recast, I am offering that with the target this week.
Yeah. Alexis just asked if there's a digital example of the database. I'm not sure.
I think, is there something like you can hand out on a disk, or is your site program?
Yes, and we're in the process of making a public database for this, and I realized that if I hand these programs out, then all the viewers are going to have their own little database, and we'll never have a big one that we can have research for, that we can have for research and we can have for community. And let's say Paul needs is working a project, and he needs a viewer, and he looks through his database, which I don't think he has one, to find out who's the best person. Well, if we have a large database that lets everyone come in, then he will have access to the world of remote viewers, okay? Now, what we're going to have to do is, because garbage in equals garbage out, we're going to have anybody who wants to use the public database will have to be trained how to use it. And then we hope for the best. Yes, I do have it. I have it on disk. I've given it out to several people, and what has happened almost every single time is they'll take the database and they'll say, oh, well, this doesn't have anything about alternate universes or ETs or something like that. And so they change the database by adding and subtracting fields, and when they do that, their database is no longer compatible with the overall database. And so it's just been a problem. I want to get a database for all remote viewers that will let them have the benefits of all of this. And every time I've handed it out, people have changed it, or else I hand it out and I talk to them a year later and I say, how are you doing? What does your database say your strengths and weaknesses are? Oh, I never have installed it on my machine. I'm going to do that next Saturday, And so basically I've just quit handing them out. I want to get one that we will have for the whole community. And in doing that, I want to have it to where every person's information and their personal information will be absolutely secure to them. And like if a researcher comes in, a researcher may get the overall data, but can never get a viewer's name or their personal information.
And why would you not want that out?
Because there are a lot of researchers out there, okay? Also, there are a lot of police out there who would love to find the best remote viewer. I don't know if that cop is working for the mafia. Okay, you know, and so if a researcher or somebody like that wants overall information, then that's what they get. But we protect the identity of all viewers. This has been a big thing of mine for, well, ever since we started out in the public. I protect my remote viewers. Is there an ETA for the public version? We keep making ETAs and then moving them further back. We are also trying to develop online training. My wife is doing the programming, and she's not in the best of health, and so basically it gets programmed whenever it gets programmed. And you know, we're pushing, but we just have to finally wind up pushing the estimated time of arrival back. So it's a promise, and yeah, we need beta testers. We will need. But in order to keep the garbage out of the data, we're going to have to train people in how to write a summary, how to move the information from the summary over into the database, and there are going to be probably, I'm predicting, 70 to 90% of the people who will try that once and say, "Oh, that's too much work," and fade out. You know. But the thing is, the ones who stick with it will find that it's not too much work at all. In fact, it's easier than the longer wave people sitting down and scoring their entire session and all. And the ones who stick with it are going to be the ones who stick with serious remote viewing, and those are the ones we want to keep track of. You know, those are the ones we want to see how well they do, help them with their weaknesses, and use them for their strengths.
Well, folks, we're at an hour and 17 minutes, and I think we should probably think about wrapping it up. Any more questions here toward the end? The scoring is done by the viewer and no one but the viewer. Did I understand that correctly?
Ideally, that's true. Okay. Now, you've got a project manager working a project, okay? And the project manager knows that the project is not finished and yet wants to score the session, but can't tell you what the target is. They can't give you feedback because they're going to use you again. Well, in a case like that, the project manager will do the scoring. There are other cases where, you know, it may be, well, right now we've got one project out that the customer said he's going to pay the people $50, and it's been going on for over a year. We haven't gotten feedback yet. I think go away. I think I got some feedback the other day, and if so, then I can finally, after over a year, I can start giving the viewers feedback. But in a case like that, let's say it's 5 years before you ever get feedback, you're not going to know where that session is, okay? And that's when your project manager then has the data, and they can go through and do the session. And like you're working for the CIA, you may not be cleared for the information you gave them. And that happens most of the time, in fact. And so someone at the CIA or some other organization like that will have to do the scoring for you, because you're never allowed to know what the feedback actually is.
Russ says, you made it easy to score now, understanding this, but more nervous to write it up.
You just have faith, man. Your subconscious mind will take care of you. It really will. It's been sitting down there whole life saying, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And now then, you know, it's been kept a child your entire life, your inner child. Fine. Give it some responsibility. Give it the responsibility of doing a good job. Let it grow up into an adult. And remote viewing, if it's done right, is one of the very, very few things in life that will ever take your subconscious mind and make it grow up into an adult. Or you can go, into battle and go to Afghanistan and stay in battle for 3 years and come back. Well, your subconscious is going to grow up a little there, but it's easier to just do remote viewing sessions. But in the end, you want your subconscious mind to grow up, have the responsibility, and in order to do that, you've got to give it permission and you've got to give it its rights. So don't worry about the write-up. Let's say you do 20 sessions trying this and they're all just dog poop. Hey, you're learning the whole time, and each one of those 20 sessions is going to be valuable to you, because through those 20 sessions your subconscious mind says, I better get on the stick here and I better start doing some good work. So that's going to help. It's worth it. Okay, I hope I haven't bored people. I hope this has been helpful. And in 2 weeks, is it? We're going to talk about summary writing in greater detail. Is that true? Okay.
That's correct. Next week, we're working a target and front-loading and retasking. If anybody wants it, they need to email me. 2 weeks, we're talking about summary writing, and the week after that, we have a target up that's more of a project for whoever participates. So thanks to all of you who came, and you're welcome, and I'm glad it was critically helpful.
Good.
Alexis, I hope we see some more of you. I know you're working hard over there in the remote viewing group.
Yeah.
So you can pass on, some of the pearls that Lynn shares with us here. So with that, good night, John Boy.
Good night, John Boy.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Good night, Ma.
I'll try to keep posting when I get things scheduled. Otherwise, just check in at WebEx and see what's on there that you could sign up for.
And tell people that Teresa is doing this, because it's a real help. It's open to everybody, and this could be helping a lot of people in the remote viewing field.
Oh, Janine says made sense of the scoring sheet to me. She didn't understand it before, so good. Glad we helped.
Yeah, databasing is not really a normal human activity. And it gets really confusing really fast if you don't understand what's going on. I hope I helped you make sense of it.
Good. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week.
Okay.
Okay. Night.
Good night.